Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. My colleagues and I will introduce how the Arcgis ecosystem, a complete web-empowered GIS, can deliver modern weather briefings and build resilient communities and businesses. Meteorological information and mapping are applied far beyond weather forecasts. Businesses, government agencies, and individuals rely on weather and climate information to protect lives and property and support data-driven decisions and drive economic growth. As Noel mentioned at the top of the hour, today's webinar will be recorded and made available for future viewings. We will keep you on mute during this session, but we encourage you to drop your questions or comments in the chat at any time throughout the presentation. We will take time at the end of the session to address your questions. We will also take the opportunity to engage with you in 3 polls to understand some of your interests in this field. Also keep in mind that we will provide use cases and resources in a follow-up email so that you can further enhance your knowledge on this topic. So any of the use cases that we talk about today, they will be provided as resources. My name is Lorraine. I am the Director of Earth Sciences Solutions on the National Government Industry Team here at Esri. I am so excited to be joined today by 2 Esri colleagues, Alex and Jeff. Alex is our Global Industry Specialist in Financial Services and Insurance at Esri. And we have Jeff, who is our Emergency Management Technical Lead at Esri. You will hear from all 3 of us today. We will deliver a range of insights on how cloud-based GIS technology provides state-of-the-art weather briefings and builds resilient communities and businesses. You see an email address on here, science@esri.com. If at any point you want to send us additional feedback or ask us questions, feel free to do so via that email address. Today's webinar is one in a 5-part series on applied meteorology using ArcGIS. This webinar series takes you on a journey to see how ArcGIS advances the understanding of the atmosphere to benefit both science and society. The first 4 webinars listed here cover the visualization, analysis, access, and dissemination of meteorological data. We talked about climate risk assessment, operational weather services, forecasting, and modeling using ArcGIS. All 4 of these webinars are available for viewing. These webinars were attended by many different industries and positions across the globe. No matter your role, we are confident that you will find benefit in this series. We will welcome you to watch these past series and check out the resources available so that you can further your knowledge on how ArcGIS applies to meteorology. A link to this webinar series will be provided in that follow-up email I talked about earlier. And again, sciences@esri.email. That's a great email for you to reach out to us. Weather watches and warnings issued by national and regional authorities provide the primary means of communicating risk of severe weather to the public. Now, operationally, this communication cuts across agencies and requires extensive collaboration and coordination, which are made easier with cloud-based GIS technologies like ArcGIS Online. You will get to see this later on today. In this session. This webinar will demonstrate, through this agenda, a series of brief presentations and resources and tools and workflows developed by Esri and this community to facilitate virtual and on-the-fly briefings and deliver tools to build resilient communities and businesses. We will demonstrate how GIS technology improves extreme weather watches and warnings and enhances communication between forecasters and the public. You will see how briefings are delivered during dynamic situations. You'll see some current streaming of refresh capabilities as well as virtual chat functionality that allow for more agile decision making and enhance hazard mitigation and resource deployment. Esri has been working actively in this field over the past few years with many of you, our customers, to support the weather and climate community and to ensure that our products and services support atmospheric science applications and operations. Understanding weather impacts and areas of risk require an interdisciplinary approach that leverages data from demographics, Earth observations, and environmental applications that the standard meteorological analysis packages are just not optimized to handle. GIS technology, however, provides the means to analyze and contextualize data from a multitude of sources and models to help identify weather patterns and assess risk. You can think of ArcGIS as a framework for applying science, mapping, and analytics to address weather risk monitoring and mitigation strategies. As you can see by some of the examples presented here on the slide, there's a wide range of use cases and organizations utilizing ArcGIS. For example, NASA Atmospheric Science Data Center, which leverages GIS for the processing and archival and distribution of NASA data. And as well, we have meteorological agencies like NOAA's National Weather Service and UK Met Office, as well as others that are working with ArcGIS to provide access to critical weather information and products. In addition, Esri's extensive business partners further contribute to this community by providing solutions built on the Esri framework. We envision our role as a unique opportunity to connect both the producers of weather information and products and the users, and across the diverse range of industries that benefit from incorporating weather information into their operations. For example, you may be working with an emergency management agency that needs to track real-time events like hurricanes, floods to provide warnings to the public. Or you may be working with an agricultural organization that needs to have a pulse on severe drought and as it may reflect or interact with their crops. Or you could be a telecom community looking to build resiliency in business operations. The Esri platform enables collaboration between these sectors and the meteorological agencies serving up this critical data and creating workflows to improve processes, protect lives and property, and enhance growth. Some of these examples are going to be shown today. So soon I will turn it over to Alex, and he's going to provide a comprehensive look into the business value of enterprise resilience. Following Alex, we will have Jeff, who is going to provide a few technical demonstrations on modernized virtual and on-the-fly statewide and national weather briefings. And again, we encourage you to please drop your questions in the chat at any time throughout the presentation, and we will address them at the end. Now, before I turn it over to Alex, I'd like for Noelle to give us our first poll of questions. Noelle? So, what interests you most about today's webinar? Select all that apply. Are you looking to learn more about the technology used to deliver briefings? Or are you looking to see how ArcGIS or just GIS in general can build resilience? Are you looking for the business value of adaptive resilience? Are you looking to see how communication happens between forecasters and the public? Or are you looking to gain additional resources to enhance your work? We'll give you a few more minutes to access that poll, and then we'll turn it over to Alex. And so we can see, wow, okay, technology used to deliver briefings. Okay, and build resilience. I'm so excited about that. Oh, and of course, forecasters and public. Well, you're going to be quite pleased with today's session because, of course, we'll be covering all of those in detail. Alex, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Lorraine. Just give me one moment here to get everything set up on my end.
Sure thing, Alex. There we go. It looks like you're good to go.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Whether you're joining us here live now or watching the recording later, I appreciate you taking these steps to increase the resilience within your organization proactively through the use of geospatial systems in the cloud. As Lorraine mentioned, my name's Alex Martini. I am the industry practice lead here at Esri for financial services, and this has a wide umbrella for me. I cover not only our consumer and commercial banking practices, but also the insurance industry that we support. And for several decades, Esri has supported some of the largest property casualty insurers here in the US, but also some of the largest global reinsurers that operate at a scale of millions of policies and portfolios of portfolios. So risk analysis is something that I am very familiar with, but my background in resilience actually comes from my education within national security. And my pathway to Esri came in through civilian intelligence and human geography. But what I found was through the power of location intelligence, whether you're looking at asymmetric threats like terrorism or the macro level impacts of climate change, the workflows themselves remain relatively the same, and that GIS helps as a system of discovery for executives to understand these complex threats in a way that other technologies just couldn't. That was my inspiration to come here. But as I understand it, we're joined today by several hundred GIS professionals and also spatially literate executives from all around the world. And this is critical. Your work spans multiple practices, from the broad-reaching missions of national government agencies or the growth mindset of customer-facing businesses in the private sector. The reason it's important that we're all here today having this discussion is that the challenges we're facing are the same, and they're far more complex, costly, and interconnected than we thought before. It's going to take a joint effort between the public and private sector to create a more resilient tomorrow. But before I get into the bulk of my presentation, I want to pause here, given the last poll we had and the title of my section. Although I'm going to be discussing the business value of resilience and how insights derived from a GIS create a competitive advantage, these are certainly applicable to the public sector and to your agencies. Within that last poll, the business value was not the highest response right here. I'm going to make sure that this applies to creating value for your stakeholders. So for those of you that responded that it's communicating and giving briefings, whether it's key stakeholders within your organization or the public at large, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, these are truly remarkable times because never before have we seen such a tectonic shift in the way that resilience is viewed by businesses. Now, traditionally, and this is up until right before the COVID-19 pandemic, mind you, resilience was viewed through the myopic lens of a static risk management or risk mitigation type of strategy. Now, don't get me wrong, those are still foundational components of achieving resilience. But the main problem was because the focus was on avoiding risk, resilience was seen as a cost center. Executives don't want to spend money to prevent some type of disruption. They want to spend money to make more money. Now, a few years back, I was leading an integrated initiative here at Esri around corporate security. And one of the figures that I came across that was really stunning to me was that on average, among Fortune 500 companies, the spend within corporate security was in the low millions of dollars, right around the $5 million mark if we were to look at, say, like a cybersecurity like department. Now, we are talking about companies that have revenues that exceed the GDP of many countries. And this just reflects that risk was not properly reflected in. So what's changed? I was just recently asked why we're having this discussion now in 2021 and what's changed in the minds of executive. Well, it's now the case that the disruptions we're facing as a business community are far greater than we can overcome with those static risk mitigation strategies. We're at the nexus now because of just the sheer frequency and severity. Resilience has now become a competitive advantage. It's a way forward for prosperity. And we saw this within the COVID-19 pandemic, that businesses can't just grow their way out of overcoming those types of disruptions because the primary impact is to fulfillment. But when we look at the destructive power of climate change moving forward, or the disruptions from COVID-19, this fundamental source of growth for businesses is being able to fulfill upon the demand that they're facing from the community as large. For those of you in the public sector, you can think about this fulfillment in terms of not a brand promise, but your mission statement. How is it you are supporting your constituents, whether it's at a community level or a national scale? Now, traditionally, the way, again, businesses could get across and get around these types of disruptions was to increase their output, try to maximize that opportunity. But I'm willing to bet that if everyone in this virtual room today, all of us has had some type of significant disruption with a business. Some of you may be waiting for appliances that you ordered months ago. Maybe you purchased something and now are frustrated to find out that it's back ordered. Maybe you're waiting for a contractor to make a much needed repair or upgrade to your property, and it's been weeks, if not months. Because of this type of disruption, we can't just go by the old ways of doing business. It's because the demand is outpacing the supply that we can fulfill upon, and this creates a disequilibrium. And this is why now resilience is a competitive advantage, not a cost center. Organizations cannot view a resilient strategy from the perspective of wasted money for things that may or may not happen. We're finding this now. In the last 18 months, how is it that some organizations posted record-breaking growth years? Certain retailers were putting up 30% revenue growth increases last year in the heart of one of the greatest economic crises since the Great Depression. It's because they were resilient. They viewed this adaptation to the changing situation as an actual growth opportunity. They realized you can't just bounce back, you have to bounce forward. But I'm gonna pause here for a moment, and we're gonna launch a poll here because I wanna get a temperature check from the audience. What is it that you're pretty much focused on from a risk and resilience perspective?
Are you looking at the macro level impacts of climate change, such as sea level rise, or are you looking at natural disasters or catastrophes, political unrest or uncertainty, terrorism or organized crime, economic uncertainty? We'll give them a few more seconds to cast their vote. And I guess, yeah, you have to select one.
You know what? This is not a surprise to me at all, especially with my background within insurance. Certainly, we are looking at this just record-breaking continuation of natural disasters in every category. We've seen this at such a large scale now. 2017 was a wake-up call for many people in the insurance industry because that's when we had Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria all strike areas of the Americas, and each one of them set a record in a different category. But since then as well, the wildfires in California have continued to break several records. So I'm gonna incorporate this now into kind of the next part that I want to talk about, which is what is the broad implications of this moving forward. All of this is related to climate change. And Swiss Re, who's one of the largest global reinsurers, they recently released the findings of their long-term climate study, which highlight that at the current pace of global warming, we could see by 2050 a net decrease in global GDP of upwards of 18%. Now, 2050 is not terribly far away. We're looking at less than 29 years. And keep in mind, during those 29 years, the population of our planet is going to significantly increase, and in some areas, it's going to double. Now, this 18%, that's across the board. Certain areas, because of their natural exposure to catastrophic events like hurricanes or wildfires, they're going to fare far worse. Now, what this means, if you have the population increasing while the GDP is decreasing, in simple economics, what this will mean is we'll see a drop in the quality of life on a global scale, the likes of which have not been seen in the information age. But there is hope. That's why we're here today. The same study has affirmed that if we meet the targets for the Paris Agreement, that's going to be reduced greatly. The actual net decrease to global GDP is only going to be 5%. Now, I say only, that is still not ideal to see that type of disruption occurring from natural disasters and climate-driven disruptions. But the difference between 5% and 18% is in one reality, we can leverage technology to start planning in a more intelligent and adaptive and resilient way to preserve our way of life. At 18%, even the most resilient businesses we're facing today are going to have challenges. Now, keep in mind as well, even if you don't live in an area that's prone to natural disasters, in our interconnected society, it is nearly impossible not to be impacted. We saw this with COVID-19, for example. You could have lived in an area that was faring very well with the case numbers, but the supply chain disruptions and the lack of fulfillment still impacted you. Now, we're seeing this too. Over the past 5 years, we've been tracking this through the annual 10K filings of the Fortune 500 space. Now, a 10K filing is an annual disclosure where organizations cite the major impediments to doing business. What were the loss centers that year? And an increasing number of them have been citing natural disasters, resource scarcity, or other types of climate-driven disruptions as an impediment to doing their business. And this isn't changing. I mentioned 2017. That was a wake-up call for wildfires here in California as we looked at things that happened in the Santa Barbara area with the Camp Fire. But since then, we have seen record-breaking events in wildfires here in California in 3 categories. We track these in terms of the total number of acres burned, the total number of structures damaged, and the total number of fatalities. Those are the 3 main categories for judging the severity of a wildfire. If I was to take the top 10 wildfires in all 3 of those events, you will overwhelmingly see fires in the past decade in each one of those categories ranking in those top 10. And this is during a time where we have unprecedented technology to battle these blazes. Businesses can't bounce back. We have to continue to rebuild better and adapt as we go forward on how it is we can learn from these types of natural disasters to create a more resilient tomorrow. And this comes into what we're looking at here. My team is working on this system for decision support that's primarily focused on climate management. Every business has a customer relations management system, a CRM, an inventory management system, enterprise database management system. But since climate change is the #1 threat to businesses moving forward, isn't it about time we give it the same appreciation? So how is it we can look at the impact of climatological disruptions across the board? What's this holistic framework that multinationals can look at and find the insights they need to make more strategic decisions? Now, again, many of you cited this. It's the increasing frequency and intensity of natural disasters that we have to continually plan for the unknown. I'll get into in a moment here what the framework looks like, but fundamental to this system is ensuring data curation and data processing in the beginning is done so in a way that executives can extract the insights that they need, understanding, of course, that many executives are not specialists like we are. This is about creating those on-demand insights to guide those strategies. How is it that we can take a holistic view of risk and put it into a single pane of glass approach? Now, I noticed that it has zoomed on mine, so one moment. There we are. Resize this for you. This is this common framework, and for anyone who's a traditional GIS analyst, this may seem simplistic, but as we talk about adaptive resilience, it is about this three-step process of preparing, analyzing, and engaging with our stakeholders. But fundamental to this is the data integration and management. We are all working with just an inordinate amount of data that's coming in. One view of this could be, for example, how we can overlay our internal data, our key assets, our personnel, any type of fixed position asset, or even dynamic in the case of employees. How can we start to overlay these with the critical components of our infrastructure? How is it that then we can take that infrastructure and analyze that for its natural exposure? How is it then we can monitor from there the real-time indicators and warnings, whether it's looking at stream gauges, for example, for flooding, or looking at land cover analysis to look at the amount of dry brush and fuel for wildfires. All of this contextualization is complex for us as the analysts and the specialists, but the whole key to this is, and I'm going to cite one of our directors here, Lori Jordan, to say it's the illusion of simplicity. Our job is to take this, they make it as simple as possible for our key stakeholders moving forward. Now, to break that framework down more, prepare, analyze, and engage. In the beginning, it's mostly data cleansing, data curation, ensuring that we have the authoritative source of information on our facilities, our employees, our distributors, our suppliers, anything in our network that could be fixed, that are those assets that we need to maintain continuity. From there, we assess what are those acute physical risks for global manufacturers and supply chains, for example. Where is it that they have high exposure to natural disasters, and how does that relate to the type of facility? So if you think about your cell phone, for example, that's not manufactured at one facility. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different facilities that made that cell phone possible to get to you. Where is it that key pieces of that, whether it's a microchip, whether it's raw materials for the wiring, where is the disruptions that could take place, and understanding those in advance so you could create redundancies. Also, this isn't just about climate risk. There are other types of risks that we could look at that are part of this threat landscape. There's political risk, economic uncertainty, asymmetric threats that we can see from terrorism and organized crime. All of these can impact the resilience of our organization. And of course, then, the main output for our stakeholders is a location-driven graphic for intuitive understanding. Back in 2016 at my first users conference, Governor Martin O'Malley talked about the show me my house mentality for executives when it came to using a GIS. And it's that when you look at things from this orthogonal perspective with a locational context, it's intuitive. Even if someone's not a GIS analyst, they immediately can relate the multidimensional data to the context of the situation at hand. So as I close today, this system of understanding, again, is about creating clarity for our stakeholders, how to synthesize and take these disparate sources of data that are coming in, contextualize that for our executives so that they can monitor and manage these strategic initiatives and make more informed decisions. So with that today, I believe we have another poll before we get into Jeff's technical presentation. I just wanted to thank you again for your time and for taking these steps to increase the resilience of your organizations.
Thanks so much, Alex. So for those of you who would like to know, what tools are you using today for briefings? Are you using PowerPoints and PDF files, maybe communicating via email? Are you using static images or maps? Or are you using dynamic dashboards, ArcGIS story maps, or others? So we'll give you a few more seconds to answer this question, and then Jeff will take us on a technical journey and then address briefings and state-of-the-art workflows to deliver briefings in a timely manner. Okay, oh goodness, okay, PowerPoints and PDF ranks the highest. All right, Jeff, well, over to you to enlighten us.
Great. Well, thanks, Lorraine, and good morning, everyone. As Lorraine mentioned, my name is Jeff Barani. I'm a technical lead here at Esri for emergency management. Nicole, am I sharing?
Not yet.
Sorry about that. Okay. All right. And so we're going to switch gears here a bit and talk about dynamic briefings using the portfolio app, and appreciate all your kind of input in the polls, and realize that PowerPoints or PDF are a common tool for briefings, obviously, as we're presenting here. And in a few minutes, we want to share some options for dynamic briefing options using real-time maps and real-time tools, and so we'll share that with you in just a few minutes. So, but before we kind of get into this, we kind of want to set the stage or the kind of the context for why this is important. So a little bit of background, Esri has a disaster response program where we've been supporting our users through different disasters or crises over the past, 27 plus years. And we've really seen, it evolve, quite a bit, not only from a technology perspective, but in a general sense, obviously with smartphones that we have today, and versus paper maps of many years ago. We've also seen the user community evolve, a lot, and we've certainly learned a lot through that process. As Alex mentioned, 2017 was a very impactful year with all the hurricanes and wildfires, and certainly a very busy year for us in terms of supporting our users, obviously, in addition to last year with COVID-19. And after 2017, we kind of stepped back and with a group of us and just kind of reflected on all the requests for assistance, really all the requests of the needs of the community, and we found several themes, some very common operational challenges that our users face that frankly GIS is very well suited to help solve. First of all, being able to understand the potential impact of an event, and obviously weather data can help us do that very well. How many people or things that we care about are within the cone of uncertainty of a hurricane, for example. Having that knowledge helps us better understand and deploy our limited resources. Having things like dashboards or story maps or briefing help us better understand rapidly changing conditions and how we might have to adjust our operational posture as a result. Some of the field tools help us report and assess damage very quickly. One of the things we're going to focus on this morning and the rest of the session is providing real-time operational briefs. There's stories from many years ago, for example, of a poor GIS person that would spend 4 hours of each operational period producing 31 essential elements of information, maps on a county by county basis. And so 4 hours of his, time were just spent on producing paper maps. Once he switched to a dynamic environment and a dynamic set of tools, those were kind of set once and were updated automatically as the data evolved and changed. And he got 4 hours back to his day. Obviously, information sharing is also critically important to be able to communicate effectively with the public and media, getting information out on how to keep them safe and resources to help them, as well as being able to share information and collaborate with stakeholders and partners. So, these kind of really represent, the common ways that we see, GIS really benefiting people from a emergency management response or operation, perspective. So, really for us, that really boiled down into 3 key themes, the ability to maintain situation awareness, the ability to conduct damage assessment, and be able to manage information sharing. And today, in this morning's session, we'll really be focusing on tools from a briefing perspective for looking at situational awareness. Now, on a side note, to help address some of these challenges that we saw in 2017, the solutions team at Esri has developed a set of templates to help jet fuel people's operations and response capabilities through a set of tools that they can get going with quickly, in these areas. A set of tools to maintain situational awareness, including tools for briefings, dashboards for your command center, simple tools to keep that up to date, as well as field assessment tools from a damage assessment perspective using Survey 123 and companion dashboards, and then tools to help manage things from an information sharing perspective. But again, in this morning's session, we're going to focus on dynamic briefing. So now I want to switch over and look at a demonstration. So what you're looking at here is the new portfolio app. This is an app that comes with both ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise, and really designed to help showcase set all your ArcGIS Online items, and as well as make it easy to navigate through them to see what's going on. And then, so in this case, in this dynamic briefing example, I've used the VCR-like controls to hit the play button to help automatically cycle through some of the content of this particular portfolio application. Now, this application includes a variety of live feeds, both from the Esri Living Atlas as well as from the National Weather Service, on various aspects of weather. And frankly, I was inspired to put together this example today based on common briefs that we all normally get. For example, the FEMA daily operations brief. Looked at the content that was in that PDF that is shipped out each morning, and really kind of took that as a challenge to see what could I find from, or what could we find from a GIS perspective to provide a dynamic and interactive way to be able to get access to the same data. And so that's exactly what we've done here. What we're looking at is each kind of individual map, a web map with dynamic data, kind of behind it. So we set this once, and this is, automatically, updated as the data changes. The data is, refreshed at, different intervals, every 5 minutes, every minute, and we get a real-time look at the data that's inside here. Now, this is, obviously I was kind of running it in kind of an unattended mode, like you might at the front of your command center as you want to have, informational products up on your screen. But certainly we can interact with this information as well. Obviously, the data is all here. So for example, if I click through the forecast precip layer, I can see how many inches of rain or precipitation we'll get in the next 72 hours here on this particular map. There's other tools and functions inside here. So for example, if we look at the National Weather Service's tropical cyclone probability map here, I can see the different areas of concern where tropical cyclones may form. There's additional tools to be able to turn on the legend to understand the details and of what we're looking at here in terms of the 2-day and 5-day probability outlook. Additionally, there's other tools that we can expose to our users based on their needs. So for example, if we wanted to have a good old-fashioned map to print out that goes along with this kind of particular product, there's a print function here. In the interest of time, I won't run this, but that will create a printed product that you can ship or share that has obviously the title, the legend, and any additional ancillary information that you want to provide. Additionally, since this is built on top of our JavaScript 4x API, this works very well on mobile devices. So what that means is, the same information that we're looking at here in a desktop view can be viewed on mobile devices, as well, and this works, pretty well. And especially since, many of us, interact with websites these days on mobile devices, it's important to be able to have a mobile experience that works well for your constituents and stakeholders to be able to access the same, type of information. And so that's what you're seeing here as I simply, flip through some of the content here on this mobile device emulator here, on the desktop. A couple of other things to focus on here is that by default we looked at the default extent of each of the maps here, but you have the options inside here to be able to zoom in on a particular location. So for example, if I'm interested in, I'll do Michigan today since there's some weather going on there. I've typed in Michigan. You can see that the map has zoomed in to that extent. We can see the heat advisory there, but now the extent of the ensuing maps are locked to that location, and now I can get a more zoomed in or kind of detailed view of that particular area as we're going through things from a briefing perspective. Furthermore, this leverages all the information that's set up in the item details page from an Arcgis Online perspective. So what that means is, in other words, I can turn on, this view to get more information about each of the maps and apps here. So this allows you to provide more kind of context for what people, are looking at, and provide some of the details, including, linking out to any, other resources that may be appropriate, including to the Arcgis Online, items within inside, Arcgis Online. So again, from a briefing perspective, this allows us to take advantage of the wealth of GIS data that's available within the community to be able to, create dynamic and engaging weather briefings like you're seeing here, and bring together a lot of great content, and put it all in your fingertips, the fingertips of your decision makers, executives, senior leaders within inside your organization. Now, this is actually a public example. We can share the link for this out with you so you can see what this looks like. But in addition to just exposing you to the capabilities of this particular application, this morning we also wanted to share with you how easy it is to create this particular application. So now I'm going to switch to a different view, and kind of the first step here is really to kind of prepare your content. Like if you're cooking a meal or something, you got to have all the appropriate, ingredients here. So what we're looking at is the couple of maps that I've prepared, and you'll notice here that I've got a good thumbnail set and a description, of the content of different, weather events that are of concern to us. Really these kind of represent some of our live feeds from an Esri Living Atlas perspective, and so just wanted to highlight here that the content is all kind of well organized before I create my app. So now here, one of the ways to do this is inside your Arcgis Online content view, click on the Create App button. Now the portfolio app is part of the Instant Apps collection, so I'll click on Instant Apps here, and it will bring up a kind of catalog or menu, if you will, of the various instant apps that are part of the collection. In this case, we're specifically interested in the portfolio app, so that's what I'll choose here. So give it a title. You can spell a tag in where we want this to be located as a part of our collection. Now I'll kind of go through the next process of configuring this particular application. Now there's a kind of express view to help us get started quickly and starting to add in some of our content here as a part of this new portfolio app. So in this case, I'll just start going through the process of adding in a new section. Now these sections contain content from ArcGIS, whether that's web maps that you'll see here, but these can be web scenes or web app builder apps, experience builder, hub sites, and the like. You can also add in a couple different file types, as well as URLs like a YouTube video or something like that. So in this case, I'll start by browsing for content, and as I mentioned, some of the content that we've prepared here. So I'll pick the first page here for our hurricanes and cyclones map. I'll add in some additional content here from our collection, flooding. And in this case, I'm just going through and picking the maps and apps that we have set, as a part of our content. So I'll just pick a couple of them here to get started. And you're noticing here, just with a couple of clicks, I'm able to quickly add in and kind of create the content that we can use here as as part of our portfolio app collection. Now notice a couple of other items of functionality have been exposed. There's an option for a splash screen, as you have here. They've recently added in the ability to have a cover page, so those are options for you to allow your audience to be able to have access to this content. We can decide if we want to include a header or not, or there's a couple of different knobs and dials to turn here as a part of the process. And this is just a couple of things here in the express view of configuration. I'll switch this to the light view. And now I'm done with the first kind of pass of pulling in some of these elements. We've gone ahead and published this information, and now we can kind of launch this out. And so, hopefully you'll get a sense of, how easy it is to really kind of get started to be able to create a portfolio app on your own to feature your great content. You'll be able to showcase and navigate through the content that you have here inside your organization. And now you'll note here that I'm able to, again, kind of flip through the content as was shown before. Now, there are additional options if we go into the kind of full setup mode. There's more knobs and dials that are exposed in terms of adding in additional functionality here to the map. Do we want to put in a scale bar, for example, give us the ability to turn functions on and off for what we want to include? Do we want our users and our viewers to be able to search for a location like I did earlier and zoom in on a specific state like Michigan or Texas? Provide any kind of share options. Maybe you want to make it easy to share via social media or print it out as I showed before. And the like. So again, I've just made some further adjustments inside this application by hitting some of the knobs and dials there. And now we can see the results of the application and some of the additional configuration options that I had updated here as a part of the process. So as you'll note now, the location, that was the info panel. The location option has been set here, so we can add that in as we'd kind of shown before. When I click the info button here, note that this is the content here that's displayed in this particular pane comes from the items details page that are set up for the Arcgis Online item, as well as leveraging the thumbnail that was set for that item as well. So that's all the more reason why it's important to have those set properly when configuring applications like this. So as you've seen, hopefully now this gives you some ideas. Hopefully you've seen how easy it is to configure the new portfolio application. Again, this is relatively new, came out in the April release of Arcgis Online and updated again in the June release to add new functionality. The team's continuing to evolve the development of the application. There's options to provide feedback on this particular app, but in a general sense, we see this as a very powerful tool for both emergency management, crisis response, and meteorology community to be able to share a range of dynamic information products in kind of an easy to use way, kind of giving us a single destination to have a dynamic content in our fingertips that works both in a desktop environment as well as mobile devices, and really kind of put the power of GIS and meteorology in the hands of our users to make better and more informed decisions and keep people safe. So with that, Lorraine, that concludes my section of the demonstration here this morning. I want to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Let's see. I have to do, let me show my screen. There we go. I've got control to be able to do so. Well, thanks so much, Jeff. That was definitely an exciting presentation. I saw a lot of questions coming in as you were presenting, which we're going to get to in a moment. We want to make sure that we do address your questions. I just have a few resource announcements, and then we'll get to the Q&A session. So please type your questions in the chat and we'll address those. So just a couple resources, and keep in mind, the follow-up email that you will get tomorrow will include any of the business case type examples that we talked about or that were shown on the slide. So there'll be a whole series of links that go to those articles, learn lessons, resources, and whatnot, so that you can increase your knowledge on this topic. And of course, the portfolio app, additional resources that to describe what Jeff has just presented will be available as well. And so that will be a follow-up email that will come via GoToWebinar that Noel will be sending out to everybody who has registered tomorrow or maybe the next day. And then I also wanted to announce that we have in the fall the Esri Ocean, Weather, and Climate GIS Forum. This will be a complimentary virtual event and registration is now open. So I encourage you to, if you have the time, join us for this event. You can also have the opportunity to present a lightning talk, and we'll be for 2 days. It'll be 2 half days. We'll be going through all the latest technology in the ocean weather and climate space, and hearing, most importantly, 4 sessions of hearing from our users and what great work that you all are doing in the field of ocean weather and climate. So again, I encourage you to join us for that session. And now I'm going to turn it over to the team for the questions. I'm going to open that up in a second. I'm going to leave this slide on the screen. You have that science@esri.com email. If at any point, if you want to reach out to us, feel free to do so. There are many eyes on that email address, and we will make sure we get the best information to you. So, okay, Alex and Jeff, I see a lot of questions coming in, and so how about if I just start reading some of them? And so, okay, let's see. One of the first ones, can you add a static map link to this portfolio app? As there are some data sources that are not services, but they're useful in a brief setting. So that's to you, Jeff.
Yeah, some of the content types that the portfolio app includes are, PDFs, PNGs, and JPEGs. So if you've got, static content or items that can be referenced by URLs, those certainly can be included as tabs inside the portfolio app.
Okay, great. And is this portfolio publicly available?
Yes, the first example of the portfolio app that I shared is publicly available. You should be able to search for it in Arcgis Online, but let me see if I can send the link.
We'll send the link, Jeff. That's going to be part of the follow-up email. We have that included.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah, we'll make sure that that's available to everybody, because that's an exciting, and included with that, the link to the app are resources, both documentation and blogs to help you get started so that you're able to really take advantage of that app. So that will be coming tomorrow. Let's see, can numerical weather prediction model data, for example, from the weather services, let me see, can you add that type of information to the app?
The app, works with, the different, data types that Arcgis Online supports. So whether, native hosted feature services or tiled services, as well as many other content types as, WMS, WMTS, and the like. So if the bottom line is if the data can be in a content type that, Arcgis Online web map support, it can be displayed in applications, like this. So in some cases that may be available natively for many of the different data types. The National Weather Services provides a lot of great, map services that can be added directly, or some additional processing may be needed on, depending on the data type to get it out of, I don't know, NetCDF or something into a format that can be added directly. So. Great.
I see more of a comment from a National Weather Services forecaster who would like to start utilizing these, I suspect, this app in their office to brief on their products, especially during impactful weather events. They've been using PowerPoints for the most and feel that this would modernize briefings for their office. And so, like I said, we're very excited that you're going to get the resource or the link to this app, as well as a whole series of resources that will equip you to be able to do that. And again, at sciences@esri.com, you can reach out to us with any questions, and we'll be more than happy to help you facilitate that.
Yeah, that's certainly great to hear, and part of the point in sharing this is that we hope that that dynamic environments like this help save you time. If you can create a briefing in a modern tool like this, you don't have to spend a lot of time building PowerPoints especially with information or data that may be out of date quickly. So glad to hear the comment from the audience, and we hope certainly that was one of the benefits we were hoping to communicate here today.
Yeah, that just makes me smile. Very exciting. And then a question to the organizers: is this recorded? Is this webinar recording going to be available? And of course, it will be available. So everybody who's registered for our webinar today, you'll get that follow-up resource email that will have a link to this to this webinar, as well as a link to the full series, which also goes into greater details on technical analysis and business overviews and whatnot. So look for those coming up. And the webinar recording should be available by tomorrow. And you can share that with anybody that you think would find interest in this. So let me see. I'm wondering if there are any plans to in the future to configure visible layers in Legends for print widget. I think you have that already, right?
Yeah, there's a layered list widget that can be added to the map control, and then the map will get printed with whatever layers are visible, depending on what you have turned on.
Right, and there was a question about, can the output, when you send out a report, can it be printed as a PDF? I would assume yes.
Yes, yeah, that's one of the options you can turn on for the.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Let's see. Can you set up an app template that can be utilized and copied to multiple and other entities to use for briefing purposes?
Not necessarily an app template, but there's probably a workflow that can be used to achieve something similar. For example, having some of the default kind of content loaded, and then using tools like the Arcgis Online Assistant to make copies of the portfolio app with a lot of the content already there, and allow you to kind of fill it in from there. So maybe that probably can be achieved through some workflow using, like I said, something like the Arcgis Online Assistant.
Okay. And let's see, we have something. Pardon me, I'm trying to read these. The questions are coming in and then they're moving as I read them. But can you perform calculations between layers? So between some of the data layers within this app?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to kind of handle that. One, with our Arcade is a new scripting language for kind of pop-ups and other aspects of Arcgis Online, and with that you can set the pop-ups to show interaction between layers. So for example, in the pop-up, show how many people or pieces of critical infrastructure are under a cone of uncertainty or something like that. You can also there is a layer filter option where you can achieve some limited kind of calculations or filtering, that way, only show forecast rain above 3 inches or something like that. So there are a couple of different ways to kind of achieve that calculation need. So.
Okay, great. Let's take one. I think we have time for one more question. Would you please summarize how this portfolio app is different from dashboard and explain some of the unique use applications?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think we view the portfolio app as a way to show a collection of content with a single destination or a single URL. That can include, dashboards. We view dashboards as a great way to have not only mapping information, but key performance indicators as well through indicator widgets or summary kind of charts. So through the Arcgis platform, there's many kind of tools at your disposal, and each have kind of different, purposes. But again, portfolio apps for a collection of content, dashboards for, kind of one part of content with maps and indicators.
Okay, great. All right. And I think we've answered most of the questions. There's some other ones that are pretty detailed in terms of a technical workflow, which, like I had said, in the resources that are going to be provided to you, there's a lot of documentations as well as use case examples and learn lessons that would be available for you to take advantage of to see what might meet your workflow need. And again, with this science@esri.com email, I encourage you to reach out to us, and we can answer any of the questions that may come your way as you're trying to implement some of the new technology that we presented here today. So, I think we're on the closing side of this. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. You got to see a wide range of perspectives from a business all the way to operational delivery of modern briefings. And you were, we provided you with insights in all the different tools and applications that we've been advancing in the ArcGIS space to help or to improve workflows within the meteorological community. And of course, working with this community so tightly. This is the community that helps us advance solutions that makes all of our work better. So again, you'll get a resource email up being sent tomorrow, and want to thank you again and encourage you to join our Ocean Weather and Climate GIS forum in the fall. So from Alex and Jeff, thank you so much for joining.